Psychedelics offer a path to amazing transcendent experiences, which can sometimes lead to what is commonly referred to as spiritual experiences, which in turn can lead to experiences of divine communion with the source of all consciousness, or as some people like to call it, God. That's all fine and dandy for those who embrace such concepts, but what about atheists? Those who openly reject anything associated with the G word. Can they also be spiritual? Spoiler alert, yeah, I think they can. And in this video, I'm going to break down why I don't think there is any contradiction in being a spiritual atheist, and that those who claim otherwise are simply wrong and are often veering into strawman caricatures in order to justify their prejudices. My name is Rob, and this is Adeptus Psychonautica. First things first, am I an atheist? No. Technically speaking, it would be more accurate to describe me as agnostic. But honestly, if someone wants to describe me as an atheist, I'm absolutely fine with it. So the reason I'm interested in covering this topic was that I'd seen some stuff online which had caused my bullshit detector to go over 9,000. So I felt it was worth trying to straighten a few things out, and we'll get into that later. But to start, let's unpack this at its simplest level. Atheism is an absence of belief in deities, like those we might recognise from the mainstream religions such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, etc. It's the opposite of theism, which broadly speaking is centred around supernatural entities who directly involve themselves in the narrative of their belief system. There are some exceptions to this, like pantheism, but that would be a video unto itself. Okay, so now we know what atheism is. It's a lack of belief in a certain thing. So what about spirituality? Spirituality involves a recognition of a feeling or sense that there is something greater than myself, something more to being human than sensory experience, and that the greater whole of which we are part of is cosmic or divine in nature. That quote comes from Dr. Maya Spencer from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and she summed it up perfectly in a way that I can relate to. There is an ideal or a concept within me, something intangible that I can believe in, which feels bigger than me as an individual. Now, some people might already be thinking that just the mention of the word spirituality sounds like an attempt to invoke the supernatural, but it's really not. And I would make the case that what we're talking about is a perfectly normal state of being. And while it carries a certain whiff of the ineffable, that doesn't mean that anything spooky is going on. As a comparison, most of us will be able to relate to everyday concepts of love or family, which evoke similar ineffable feelings just like spirituality. But they're so baked into our lives that we just take these feelings for granted as being normal. Take family as an example. If you stop and think about it for a moment, then you soon realise how hard it is to define family as a concept in any meaningful way. And so that in order for it to mean anything at all, you simply have to rely on the assumption that everyone else knows what the fuck you're talking about. Family, yes. Family is like love and trust and honour. Lineage, it's important, yes, it's the people you are related to by blood, but I mean, sometimes not. I mean, you can adopt people and shit, and well, you can join with other families with marriage, I suppose, and you know, sometimes your friends are like your family. I mean, I don't fucking know. Go on, piss off. My point here is that it's not so weird to have a fuzzy, ineffable concept just like family. Something that you feel more than you actually understand. Something that is bigger than you, and I'd make that same argument for spirituality. So this concept of a higher power, something that we're aligned to, it's not as woo as you might first think. And when we apply that concept to ourselves, as in our own highest ideal version of ourselves, you know, the one who is brave, selfless, loving, compassionate, whatever rocks your boat, well then what I think we are imagining there is a spiritual being. And the path to becoming that person, that path is spirituality. At least, that's how I see it. Now, nowhere in that is there any need for any religious deities. and it's perfectly obvious that you can live a spiritual life completely free of religious gods. Just go and look at Shaolin monks or any other Buddhist tradition, and then try and make the argument that these aren't spiritual people. Yeah, good luck with that. There is no Buddhist god that they're all praying to, so clearly a supernatural deity is not part of the essential criteria of what makes someone spiritual, so we can put that argument to bed. I think I've demonstrated that there's no objective link between deity-based belief systems and spirituality. So on that basis, I think it's perfectly reasonable to be able to describe yourself as a spiritual atheist, if indeed that is what you are. Logically, there is no connection between the supernatural beliefs and spiritual beliefs, so by definition, anyone trying to say that these two things contradict each other is just plain wrong. Honestly though, I find this over-reliance on labels to define ourselves a little bit cringeworthy, especially when it's coming from someone who is smugly describing themselves as spiritually enlightened or awakened, and using that as a means to inflate their own ego and beat somebody else down. Humanity as a whole would be a lot better off if we just stopped being so far up our own arses that we felt the need to signal to the world how awesome we think we are, whether that's being enlightened, atheist, stage turquoise, star seeds, or whatever. I think we do far better when we just stand on our own 2 feet as a human being and interact on that level. So having said all that, I want to cycle back around as to why I felt the need to make this video. And it's because I'd seen a couple of instances where psychonauts were jumping on this bandwagon of atheism equals anti-spirituality. One recent example of this came from quite a surprising source on the YouTube channel Theory of Everything, which is a guy called Curt Jaimungals who interviews people with interesting and unusual ideas. Now, I just want to highlight up front that Curt seems like an intelligent guy, and I don't think this clip is an accurate representation of his entire character, but rather is one of those completely fucking dumb outbursts that we all make from time to time. Still though, it does highlight just how mentally twisted people can get over these ideas around spirituality, to the point where they're inventing an other, in this case atheists, and are fantasizing a fairly ridiculous narrative to justify their beliefs. Check this out.
Forget about God, forget about using that word. I would say that an atheist is in denial of... This is tricky. I would say that an atheist can be in denial of themselves being conscious because they reject existence to such a degree, or they hate it at some level. I would say they hate it at some level. And the reason is that if you talk to an atheist, it's so interesting to me. They have a hatred for God. They don't... It's not simply that they don't believe in God. And the reason is this.
I agree with that.
The reason is this.
They hate the concept of it.
No, not just that. They would hate God if God existed. And the reason is they have an arrogance about them.
Oh, you can smell the shit from 5 miles away.
Honestly, if I'd only tuned in to that show for that speech, I would have thought I was listening to a young earth creationist, someone who's all fired up after watching the piece of Christian propaganda, God's Not Dead.
Do you hate God?
This is ridiculous.
Why do you hate God? Answer the question. You've seen the science and the arguments. Science supports his existence. You know the truth. So why do you hate him? Why? It's a very simple question, Professor. Why do you hate God?
Because he took everything away from me. Yes, I hate God. All I have for him is hate.
Okay. Moving away from Curt, I think what this comes back to is people inflating their own ego and trying to feel superior in their spirituality. And I would argue that anyone blarting on about their own spiritual credentials is really just inadvertently signalling the exact opposite. Just like when you see someone boasting about what a good parent they are, or flexing about how popular they are, then often they are grossly compensating because it's the opposite that's true. And really what you're seeing is someone's insecurities on full display, and it's making them act like a bit of a twat. Spirituality has got nothing to do with religious or paranormal beliefs, and it's got everything to do with the way you live your life and your connection to yourself as a human being. And if part of that for you is that you include a religious or supernatural framework, then good for you. But that doesn't make you any more spiritual than this Shaolin monk who worships awesome kick-ass kung fu. Anyway, that was my take on the whole atheism versus spirituality thing. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and if you want to discuss this topic any further, then consider joining me on my call-in show Beyond the Breakthrough, and we can have a chat all about it, and I'll leave a link up there somewhere with all the details. As always, a big shout out to my supporters on Patreon, and if you want to be a part of the Adeptus Psychonautica community, you can join us on either Discord or Reddit, and all those kind of links are in the About section on my channel or in the description below. That's it for now. Press like and subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will see you guys next time.